Hey everybody, I hope you all are doing well and welcome back. So today we are going to be doing an unboxing of whiskey that we bought from overseas that came in the mail. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the whiskeys and why we decided to buy them and why we had to buy them from outside the country. Now, if you like these videos of the wonders, of the hauls, of the unbottlings, the unboxings, the reviews, and really all the great stuff we got cooking up for you, and we got tons of great stuff cooking up for you, don't forget to like and subscribe. And that way you can get notified when our newest videos come out on Sundays and sometimes in between, like this one. All right, now, let's get down to the video. All right, so for a real quick whiskey check today, I'm going to be drinking, you know what? I'm going to drink something a little special, perhaps even Special Reserve, is this Weller Special Reserve. And in fact, we just recently did a comparison on it, is it better than Blanton's, between this Weller Special Reserve and the Blanton's. And although you may be able to guess what the actual answer was, if you want to take a look at it, I'll put a link up here so you can do that as well. So let's get a glass. Sadly, there is no pop, but there is a whatever you would call that. Let's get a little juice for myself. All right, and to whiskey, because let's face it, you can never drink too much of it. You can only really just drink it too fast. Cheers. All right, now, without any further ado, let's get to the unboxing. As you can see, I got a bottle that is Fragile. And no, it's not from Italy. And let's get this thing open in my trusty box opener. Maybe do it like this. Get this one. Oh, that did not open the way I thought it would. All right, so let's get the first one out of here and get an incision on this one. And the first one that we have is... Aha! The Michter's 10-year bourbon. Woo! That is a good-looking bottle. Take a look at that. That is just a thing of beauty. And I'll tell you what, I say it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. I do like the fishnet. So first up, we got this Michter's 10-year-old bourbon. And, you know, Michter's itself is a whiskey maker that is kind of similar to Buffalo Trace. It has a full lineup of whiskeys from, you know, the least expensive Michter's, like these kinds of ones that you can find pretty readily, you know, all over the place, here, there, as well as yonder. But then they have the 10-year like this one, which is the bourbon, and they have 20 and they have 25-year-old whiskeys that are, in some cases, made basically of unobtainium. You just can't even find them. Oh, and they also have some revival blends, like the Shanks and the Baumburgers, which they rebooted. So it's kind of a cool company that has a lot of different facets to their bourbon. Michter's being one of the oldest distilleries in the United States, although it was not in continual operation because it had to stop during Prohibition. They didn't make whiskey for medicinal purposes, but it has become known for its quality in both its bourbons as well and its rye. Now, it was originally established in 1753 in the great state of Pennsylvania, but now, like many of the finest bourbon makers in the country, it's based out of Kentucky. Now, specifically this Michter's 10, like I said, it is pretty rare to find here in the United States, and moreover, at a reasonable price. The Michter's 10 is the mid-range of the line from Michter's, because like I said, they have a 20 and a 25, and even some other crazier ones. But it has an ABV of 47.2%. This one, unfortunately, is at 700 milliliters. I don't know if you all can see that. It always chaps me a little bit, but, you know, you got to do what you got to do, and then we got it overseas. So it's 700 milliliters, and presumably this Michter's bourbon is from 2021, because the distiller actually didn't put out any bourbon for 2022. Now, we got this one specifically for $180.44, and again, that is not including the shipping as well as the handling, but I think, you know, at least at the time, I thought it was a pretty reasonable price for the whiskey. Now, although I do see it previously priced at places like Bevmo, you can see it online for $169.99. But of course, right now and basically everywhere, always, it's out of stock. So one of the reasons that we decided to add this bourbon to the collection is because earlier this year, the wife and I think when we were in Paris, I'll put a link up here, there's a video of it, we had a chance to try a shot of the Michter's 20 bourbon, and we were pretty amazed by it. It really kind of knocked us off our feet. It was subtle, it was deep, had some great flavors. Of course, despite the relatively low ABV, especially because we were comparing it to the William Weller LaRue at the same time, which is a world of different. But we wanted to try this Michter's 10 because one, it came up and it was available. Two, we thought, maybe it still has some of that great Michter's 20-ness to it, not necessarily half, but at 10 years. And I also want to see if the mid-range Michters really can compete with some of the other mid-range, like Warriors, the Stag Junior, or I guess they call it Stag now, or even some of the E.H. Taylors, or even some of the mid-tier Wellers, for that matter. All right, so let's move this over here and get the next bottle out. And the next bottle that we have is another one that is kind of a step up from my most favorite of whiskeys. Something that I go to as a go-to quite often, a little too often. Let's see, we gotta get it opened up here. Which is going to be this E.H. Taylor single barrel. Oh yeah, so much packing. Grateful for the packing, but it's kind of a pain. E.H. Taylor single barrel, which again, I love the small batch. Again, it's something that I drink on a very regular basis and thoroughly enjoy. But this one is basically going to be a step up from, the small batch. This is the big brother, if you will. Additionally, the E.H. Taylor is one of the whiskeys that are kind of on our checklist of whiskeys that we want to work up the line, up the family line, like we are doing with some of the Wellers, if we can find them in time, as well as like some of the Islay whiskeys, like some of the Campbelltowns and Lagavulins. So the E.H. Taylor is the family that we want to kind of work up, right? We want to get a chance to try them out and see how it changes from one level to the next. So the next logical step from the small batch is the E.H. Taylor single barrel. Man, I am really excited to give this one a try. It is just, again, yet another beautiful bottle. Now, E.H. Taylor is named after a relative of President Taylor, one Colonel Edmund Haynes Taylor Jr., who was actually a real colonel. He was not a self-titled colonel like Colonel Sanders. But E.H. Taylor himself was actually one of the previous owners of the Buffalo Trace Distillery, who helped bring about the Bottle and Bond Act of 1897, and who also built the infamous and famous Warehouse C that Buffalo Trace still uses now and houses some of their most delicious whiskeys. Now, specifically, this E.H. Taylor single barrel is ABV'd at 50% because it is also bottle and bond. So, it's not going to be an ABV monster. It's not going to be something to put you on your butt at the end of the night, but it'll definitely be enough to get you to where you would want to go. It has a speculative mash bill of 75% corn, 10% rye, and 15% barley, or the so-called mash bill number 1 from the Buffalo Trace portfolio. And although it doesn't have an age statement, it is rumored to be around 7 years old. Now, we got this one from the same place overseas. We got it for $123.73, which admittedly is kind of a steep increase over the MSRP, which you can find around $60 if you get it at a place that sells it at MSRP. I think, though, we just saw one at a liquor store while we were just randomly driving around for $199.99. So I'd put that 123 kind of at the mid-range price range, because again, it's going to be something that you find typically at a Total Wine or Bevmo, at least here in California, and I've never seen it at Costco. Now, my hope for this whiskey, and again, we're going to have to see, is that it picks up kind of where the small batch left off. Because I feel like the small batch, again, it's something that I really fell in love with. It's probably the Buffalo Trace that I enjoy the most often. But I do feel like it lacks a bit of complexity as well as longevity with its finish, which is kind of, again, what you would expect from the entry level of the E.H. Taylor. Now, hopefully the single barrel, it does keep that family resemblance that I learned to love with the small batch, but hopefully adds more complexity and longevity to the finish that, again, small batch does an okay job at, but I think it could be better. So that'll be really interesting to see as well. And we're going to be tasting all that and trying that out on the channel too. All right, last but not least is another member of the Michter's family. And if you have not guessed it by now, you probably will be able to pretty quickly, which is going to be the Michter's 10 Rye. So let's get this one out. Oh, don't want to rip the fishnets. Ta-da! Michter's 10 Rye. And I'm pretty excited about this one as well, because I really do love rye. Now, I know rye is probably the least favorite of the two out of the bourbon as well as on the rye. But I think they both have some great characteristics, and I know that I really love rye. I always think it's interesting, though, that if you go to Total Wines, they basically hide the rye section way in the back because either maybe the people don't like them or they just want to keep them separate from the bourbon, and they're always way smaller in the bourbon section, so that definitely means something. So I'm totally excited to have both whiskeys, the versions of the Michter's 10s, the bourbon as well as the rye, because I think it'll be really interesting to compare them side by side and see at the same age statement, as parallel as they can be, what those major differences between the two are. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure, and I'll probably have to look it up. This, again, is the 700 milliliter bottle. Where's my 50 centiliters? Europe. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly what year this one was done. I'm assuming it's a 2022 rye because they actually did put one out, and we just kind of recently got it, so I'm assuming it's a 2022. Specifically, the Michter's 10 Rye, like the Michter's 10 Bourbon, is aged 10 years, but it does have a lower ABV at 46.4%. So it's a little lower in stature as far as the ABV goes. We got this one from the same place as we got the other two, and we got it for $205.19. So it's kind of strange. It's a little bit lower ABV, but it's a little bit more expensive and presumably a little bit less desirable. So I'm not really sure how that worked out, but that's kind of how it worked out. Now, the reason we wanted to add this to the collection was kind of a couple reasons. First, as I had already mentioned, we wanted to have both the bourbon and the rye versions, bourbon and rye, at the 10-year expression from Michter's so we can compare them and also compare them to other mid-range bourbons and ryes. Second of all, it was kind of at a reasonable price, and we can argue about whether it's reasonable or not. And then, of course, third, like with the E.H. Taylor, where they have a family, we wanted to kind of work our way up the family ladder of the Michter's line, right? Because we have the baby Michters, I guess, and then we have some of the middle child of the Michters, and we'll have to see whether our money or our taste buds run out first. I'm not quite sure if we can ever get any of those Michter's 20s or 25s or anything crazy like that. So again, super excited to have these in the collection, and we're going to be doing tastings and reviews and comparisons of them all put together. And if you want to see those, stay tuned because we'll have those coming out soon. So that is our unboxing for the day of the Michter's 10 Rye, Michter's 10 Bourbon, and the E.H. Taylor Single Barrel. And I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you get notifications when our newest videos come out on Sundays and sometimes in between, like this one. Now remember, if you do find a whiskey that you love, wherever it is in the world, just buy it. Because if you don't, somebody else surely will. And in this case, it might even be me. All right, everybody, I'm out. Have a great rest of your week, and adios.